Hello everyone. Yeah, in the last class we are going to discuss with the types of chemical reactions. Right? We discussed with the types of chemical reaction. And also we completed with the two types of chemical reactions. How many types of chemical reactions we have? We have 5 important types of chemical reactions. What are those 5 important types of chemical reactions? The 5 important types of chemical reaction is, the first is combination reaction, second one is decomposition reaction, third one displacement reaction, fourth one double displacement reaction, and the last one is redox reaction. Redox reaction is also called as an reduction and oxidation reaction. What is redox reaction is called as? Redox reaction is also called as an reduction and oxidation. Redox reaction is also called as an reduction and oxidation reaction. These are the 5 important types of chemical reaction we are going to discuss. Now, in the last class only, we discussed with the 2 important types of chemical reactions. What are those 2 important types of chemical reactions we discussed? We discussed with the combination reaction and also we discussed with the displacement reaction. We will see some concept of that, then we will go with the third one. If you see the first one, that is the combination reaction. This is the general form of writing the combination reaction. How we are going to represent generally means when A plus B give rise to AB. That is, the two reactants are combine each other to form the one product. This is known as the combination reaction. You already know this. Example for this type of reaction is when carbon, if it is reacted with the oxygen, it forms carbon dioxide. Okay, this is the example for the combination reaction. After knowing, you already discussed with this experiment, right? After that, the next type of the reaction is decomposition reaction. Here, what happens? In decomposition reaction, the single reactant is split into the two types, two or more than two products. What is decomposition reaction? The reaction in which the reactant is split into the two or more than two products. That type of reactions we call it as an decomposition reaction. What are decomposition reaction? The reaction in which the reactant is split into the two or more than two products. That we call it as an decomposition reaction. In decomposition reaction, we discussed with the 3 types. Yeah, you remember that in the decomposition reaction, we discussed with the 3 types. What are those 3 types? Thermal decomposition, electrolytical decomposition, and photolytic decomposition. Right? We discussed with the 3 types of decomposition. What are the 3 types of decomposition we discussed? The 3 types of decompositions, what we discussed is the thermal decomposition, electrolytic decomposition, and photolytic decomposition. These are the 3 important types of decomposition. Thermal means the decomposition reaction takes place in the presence of the heat. The decomposition reaction takes place in the presence of the heat. We call it as a thermal decomposition. What is electrolytic decomposition? The decomposition takes place in the presence of the electricity. The decomposition reaction takes place in the presence of the electricity. We call that as an electrolytic decomposition. And the third one, photolytic decomposition. What is photolytic decomposition? The decomposition takes place in the presence of the sunlight. What I written the example here. Okay, this is the example for the decomposition reaction by using the sunlight. When silver chloride, if it is exposed to the sunlight, it forms silver and chlorine. Just a minute. It forms due to the presence of the sunlight here. Due to the presence of the sunlight, it forms 2Cl2. That is, chlorine gas is evolved. This is the example for the decomposition reaction. You already know these two. One is of the combination reaction and another one is of the decomposition reaction. Now, the third type of the reaction, what we are going to discuss is the displacement reaction. Displacement. What is the meaning of displacement? We are going to remove the one thing and in that place we are going to add some other thing. Displaces. Dispatched. Okay, it is get moved. What is displacement reaction? The reaction in which the higher constituent displaces the lower constituent. What are displacement reaction? The reaction in which the higher constituent displaces the lower constituent. This type of reactions are known as displacement reactions. If you see the general reaction, if you see the AB is the lowest component. Okay, AB is the lowest component and C is the more active metal. If the more active metal displaces the low active metal, we call this type of reactions is the displacement reaction. We call it this type of reactions is the displacement reaction. Example, can you take the example? Okay, take 2 iron nails. Okay, you want to take the 2 iron nails. In that, the 1 iron nail you want to put in the atmosphere as it is. Okay, you just put it into the test tube or you just leave it as it is. And another 1 iron nail, you want to take that iron nail and you want to put that iron nail in the copper sulfate solution. What you want to do? You want to take 1 iron nail and you want to kept in the atmosphere as it is, or you want to kept it in the test tube. If you see the next iron nail, that iron nail you want to put it into the copper sulfate solution. Leave for some time. What happens when you leave after some time? The copper, the iron that present in the atmosphere is as it is. Okay, I am not telling that leave it for 10 days, 20 days, not like that. For some time. Okay. On the iron that you put in the copper sulfate solution, it changes its color. Okay, it changes the color. Why it changes the color? The iron is in different color. When you put it into the copper sulfate solution, it turns into the brown color nail. Why the brown color of the nail is formed? Why means, if you see the iron, what the nail you put into the copper sulfate solution, here the iron is the more active metal when compared to the copper. If you compare to the copper and iron is the more active metal. Therefore, what happens? The iron displaces the copper. It removes the copper, come out from the sulfate. I am going to stay with sulfate. Okay, it take away the copper from the sulfate and in that place the iron go and present in the sulfate. Therefore, it forms iron sulfate, FeSO4 plus copper is formed. This type of the reaction and this activity tells you about the displacement reaction. What is displacement reaction? Now I am telling one more time the definition. What is displacement reaction? The reaction in which the lower constituent was displaced by the higher constituent, or you can tell replaced. What is displacement reaction? The reaction in which the lower constituent replaces the higher constituent, replaced by higher constituent, is known as displacement reaction. Understood what is displacement reaction and understood the activity? Now we are going to discuss with the next type of the reaction. The next type of the reaction is the double displacement reaction. The double displacement reaction, in that bracket I written as PPT. Don't think that is PPT presentation. No, the PPT represent here precipitate. Therefore, we can tell that double displacement reaction is a precipitation reaction. In your examination, they may ask, define double displacement reaction, give an example. Or otherwise, they ask, define precipitation reaction, define precipitation reaction with an example. Other, they ask that what is precipitation reaction, give an example. Okay. Okay, what is this precipitation reaction or what is this double displacement reaction means? If you see in the displacement reaction, here the lower constituent was replaced by the higher constituent. But if you see here in the double displacement reaction, both the reactant are replaced. Both the reactant are replaced to give the two new products. What is the double displacement reaction? The reaction in which the two reactants are replaced. This double displacement reaction. The reaction in which the two reactants are replaced. The two reactants are replaced to give two new products. The two reactants are replaced to give the two new products. This type of reactions we call it as an double displacement reaction. What is double displacement reaction? The reaction in which the two reactants are replaced to give two new products. The two reactants are replaced to give two new products. This type of reactions are known as double displacement reaction. Understood? Now, to explain this double displacement reaction, now we are going to discuss with the one activity. What you are going to do in this activity means, in the one test tube, you want to take sodium sulfate. Na2SO4 means sodium sulfate. In the one test tube, you want to take the sodium sulfate. And in the another test tube, you want to take the barium chloride. Ba means barium, Cl is chloride. When you want to take the sodium sulfate in the one test tube and you want to take barium chloride in the one test tube. These two are liquids. Sodium sulfate is also liquid, barium chloride is also liquid. After that, what you want to do means you just pour it. Okay, you just pour the barium chloride to the sodium sulfate or sodium sulfate to the barium chloride. Anything is good. You want to pour the sodium sulfate to the barium chloride or barium chloride to the sodium sulfate. What happens here? The barium is go and link with the sulfate. It replaces the chloride and it will react with the sulfate to form barium sulfate. And also here the sodium replaces the sulfate and reacts with the chlorine to form sodium chloride. Ma'am, you written that PPT. Where we tell this as precipitation reaction means, first of all, before going to know about precipitation reaction, you want to know about what is precipitation. Okay, what is precipitation means? When you are going to conduct the reaction, if you get one of the product as an insoluble solid. Okay, if you get one of the product as an insoluble solid, then that insoluble solid we call it as an precipitate. The insoluble solid. What is the insoluble solid you will get? That insoluble solid we call it as an precipitate. And the complete reaction. Okay, and the complete reaction we call it as an precipitation reaction. Understood the concept? When we are going to conduct the reaction, if you get insoluble solid, then that insoluble solid we call it as an precipitate. The insoluble solid we call it as an precipitate. And the process we call it as an precipitation reaction. Understood what is precipitation reaction and what is precipitate? Therefore, here the obtained barium sulfate is an insoluble solid. The obtained barium sulfate is an insoluble solid. That's why we call it the double displacement reaction is an precipitation reaction. The double displacement reaction we call it as an precipitation reaction. First of all, what is double displacement reaction? Understood? The reaction in which the two reactants are replace each other to give the new products. This type of reactions are known as double displacement reactions. And this is the example. When sodium sulfate, if it is reacted with the barium chloride, it forms barium sulfate plus sodium chloride. And the last type of the chemical reaction is The last one, the last type of the chemical reaction is oxidation and reduction reaction. Oxidation and reduction reaction, we also call it as a redox reaction. Oxidation and reduction reaction. Oxidation and reduction reaction, we call it as a redox reaction. What is this redox reaction means? In the reaction, if both oxidation and reduction takes place in the same reaction. In the reaction, both oxidation and reduction takes place in the same reaction, then that type of reaction we call it as an redox reaction. Understood? First of all, definition of redox reaction. What is redox reaction? The process in which both the oxidation and reduction takes place in the single reaction, then that type of reactions are known as redox reaction. In the redox reaction, you want to know about what is oxidation and what is reduction. Okay, first we will discuss about what is oxidation, then we will discuss with reduction. What is oxidation? What is this oxidation means? The reaction in which oxygen is added. In any of the reaction, if oxygen is get added, then that type of reactions are known as oxidation. What is oxidation? The reaction in which the oxygen is added. In any of the reaction, if oxygen is added, then that type of the reaction are known as oxidation reaction. If you see the example here, in this reaction, here the copper is added with the oxygen. Therefore, in this reaction, oxygen is added. If oxygen is added, then that type of reactions are known as oxidation. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. Addition of oxygen, we call it as an oxidation reaction. And if you see the reduction, here the addition of hydrogen takes place. Addition of oxygen, we call it as an oxidation, and addition of hydrogen, we call it as an reduction. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen, we call it as an oxidation, and also the addition of hydrogen, we call it as an reduction. And also another one definition is there for oxidation and reduction. Removal of oxygen, removal of hydrogen. Addition of oxygen, removal of hydrogen, we call it as an oxidation. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen. Addition of oxygen and removal of hydrogen. Addition of oxygen and removal of hydrogen, we call it as an oxidation reaction. Therefore, what is reduction reaction? Addition of hydrogen and removal of oxygen, we call it as a reduction reaction. Understood the definition of oxidation and reduction? What is the definition of oxidation and reduction? If you see, oxidation means addition of oxygen and removal of hydrogen. Addition of oxygen and removal of hydrogen, we call it as an oxidation reaction. What is reduction reaction? The reaction in which addition of hydrogen and removal of oxygen takes place. This is known as reduction reaction. If you see the example, I said that in the copper, here the copper oxygen is added to form copper oxide. This is the best example for the oxidation reaction. If you see the second one, this here the copper, if it is reacted with the hydrogen. Copper is reacted with the hydrogen to form copper and water. This is the example for both oxidation and reduction. If you see, this is the example, best example for both oxidation and reduction. How? If you see this one, from copper oxide to copper, removal of oxygen takes place. Removal of oxygen, we call it as a reduction. And if you see here, hydrogen, hydrogen to water, addition of oxygen takes place. Addition of oxygen, we call it as oxidation. Therefore, if the two in the reaction, if both the oxidation and reduction takes place, then this type of reactions are known as oxidation redox reaction. Both the oxidation and reduction. Both the oxidation and reduction takes place in the same reaction, then that type of reactions are known as redox reaction. Understood? Okay, now this completes all the types of the chemical reactions. We completed with 5 types of chemical reactions. What are the 5 types of chemical reactions we discussed? The first one is combination reaction. Second one is displacement reaction. Third one is, first one is combination reaction. Second one is decomposition reaction. Third one is displacement reaction. Fourth one is double displacement reaction. And the fifth one is redox reaction. This completes the types of chemical reaction. After this, we are going to discuss with the last two concepts of this chapter, that is corrosion, and the next one is rancidity. This is the next two important concepts of this chapter, corrosion and rancidity. What is this corrosion means? Take an example of iron. You just put the iron in the outer surface, that means to the atmosphere, leave it for several days. You leave it the iron for the several days. What happens? It reacts with the moist, it reacts with the water, it reacts with the air, everything it reacts, right? And it becomes, something is rusted on that iron, right? That process we call it as a rusting of iron. Okay, that process we call it as a rusting of iron. Okay, the corroding of metal, that means the rusting of metal. This corrosion means the corroding of metal by some of the other elements. The corroding of metal by the atmosphere, we call it as an corrosion. Corroding of metal from the atmosphere, we call it as an corrosion. Not only from the atmosphere, some of the other particles also. Okay, we call it as an corrosion. Best example for corrosion is the rusting of iron. We are using so much of money, right? So we are using so much of money to paint that iron. If the iron gets rusted, we are going to use lot of amount of money to prevent from this iron. Okay, there are some of the methods we can use to prevent the rusting of iron. What are the method means? We can apply the grease or oil to the iron, or we can use paints to the iron, and also we can do galvanization. Galvanization is nothing but the process in which the iron particles are coated by the zinc. The iron particles are coated by the zinc. That process is known as galvanization. This is also another one process. We can use it to prevent the iron from the rusting. Concept understood. What is corrosion? The corroding of the metal. The corroding of the metal we know as the corrosion. And the last concept of this chapter is the rancidity. The last concept of this chapter is rancidity. What is this rancidity? You taken some of the chips packet, okay? You just take some of the chips packet, just make one hole or just cut small of the piece of that chips packet, leave it for 1 day. Okay, don't eat any of the chips that present in the chips packet. If you leave it for 1 day, what happens next means in the next day the smell or the chips become soft and right, and also you get the dirty inconvenient smell. That we call it as an rancidity. Why that you get the uncomfortable smell? Why means when this fats and oil, the oil that present in the chips is oxidized. Okay, if the fats and the oils, if any of the fats and the oils are reacted, if the fats and some of the oils are get oxidized, it gets rancid. That means the smell we can't inhale that smell. Okay, that's why we want to store any of the substances in the airtight container. Why we are going to use the airtight container? Because if you use the airtight container, the oxygen is not go inside the container, and what are the food that present in the container is not get rancid. That's why we want to put the food. We want to put the food in the airtight containers. This is all about this chapter. What are the things that we discussed in this chapter? First we discussed with chemical reactions, chemical equations, how we are going to balance the chemical equation, the next important concept of this chapter, how we are going to balance the chemical equation. Next we discussed with the types of chemical reactions. In the types of chemical reaction, we discussed with the 5 concepts: combination reaction, decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, double displacement reaction, and oxidation and reduction. And finally, we discuss with the corrosion and rancidity. This completes your first chapter, that is chemical reaction and chemical equation. If you study this chapter properly, you will get 4 marks from your final examination. Hope you understand every concept in this chapter. Okay? Bye students.